Hey everybody. It's been probably a hot minute. That's, I think, my opening line now. Hey, it's been a while. How's it going? Yes, I'm back. Oh, curtains. Come on now. There's a cat right here. In case you see the curtains move, it's because of her. So I am actually making this video because I reread The Catcher in the Rye for probably the fourth or fifth time, and then I was like, wow, I need to make a video about this because this is a great book, okay? So this is going to be my opinion of the book, not necessarily like what the book is about, so definitely would contain some spoilers. If you haven't read it, it's literally like this long. Just go read it. I mean, it'll take you like 2 or 3 days at most, probably. It has a very readable style. It's very kind of first-person narrative, so it sort of reads like a conversation, which can just flow really well and just kind of be more interesting to follow along. It's not necessarily like descriptive. I don't know, when I think of descriptive, I think of like Lord of the Rings, the books, which I think became a little bit too descriptive in places, and quite frankly, the movies possibly are better, but that's another video for another day. Today, The Catcher in the Rye. Where to even start? So, of course, our main character is Holden. He is 16, I believe, and one of the interesting aspects of The Catcher in the Rye is that the 16-year-old Holden is, he has a couple of days that we are told about, but we were told by 17-year-old Holden. A year later, Holden is reflecting back and telling us about what happened to him during his, when he became, oh, what did he call it? I'll just tell you about this madman stuff that happened to me around last Christmas, just before I got pretty run down and had to come out here and take it easy. So immediately, within the first 2 paragraphs, we know that something, a mental breakdown happened to him, and he almost seems like he's either institutionalized or has had some help, and he's kind of telling the story to move past it or to get through it, right? Apparently I got this when I was in high school or something. I wrote all in this book, so I will never let anybody borrow this because this is embarrassing. Good job, self. I'm sure your 17, 18, 19-year-old thoughts are super valuable. How annoying. So some points that I wanted to make about The Catcher in the Rye, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about. I kind of want to touch on what I feel the main themes are. So Holden is obviously going through a lot. He is been kicked out of schools multiple times. He just lost all of the fencing team's kit. He lost all of their gear on the trains in New York City, which he kind of brushes past, but obviously he feels really, really bad about it, and he is really and he feels, it's obviously impacted him, even though he kind of brushes past it and pretends like it's not that big of a deal. His roommate is Stradlater, right? He's like the buff, like gets all the girls dude who's like the it boy, right? And Holden lives with him and is faced with like, this is what I should be, this is what I am, I feel like he has to deal with that. His younger brother Allie passed away, I think 3 years ago from leukemia, and Holden just casually throws out, oh yeah, I broke like all the windows in one room, I punched them all out, when I learned about his death. And it's like, Holden, you've got some stuff that you're dealing with. I think one of the catalysts for this, his couple of days in New York City. Oh, welcome Gubbis to the stage. Ah! He loves me, obviously. See, if I love him, he'll leave me alone. Would you kindly stop that, Gatsby? So I think kind of what sets Holden off a little bit is when he learns that Stradlater is going on a date with Jane, and Jane is a girl who Holden actually likes as a person. They used to hang out, they would play checkers. She keeps all of her kings on the back row. He actually knew her as a person, and she knew him as a person, and she accepted and liked him for who he was. And then she's going on a date with Stradlater, who, Holden says is like a ladies' man or whatever, and he's super concerned that Jane's just going to be kind of like taken advantage of and whatnot. So Holden I think that's kind of like the tipping point, in addition to being kicked out of Pensy, losing all of the fencing team's gear, etc. So he's going through a lot. So he kind of then goes on the excursion of, he goes to New York City. He's talking about ducks. Where do the ducks go in the wintertime? To taxi drivers. He's trying to meet up with girls for drinks, and who, at least 2 of them in the book are most likely prostitutes, 1 definitely. He's so desperate for attention. Not attention for attention's sake, but I think he wants a real connection with people, and nobody cares about him in this book. I think Holden is kind of a weirdo. He's I think he's smart, but I feel like he's the type of smart that isn't necessarily, let's whack myself in the face, isn't necessarily accepted by everybody. Everybody at Pensy is only concerned with like drinking and girls and all that stuff, and Holden is just like out there, kind of sad, kind of rejected by people and the world, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. And I think he kind of, you know, goes through the breakdown and whatnot. So that's, I think, what The Catcher in the Rye, at least like the first big half of it, probably first big half, are about. We are shown Holden has been rejected by society, and Holden is hurting desperately and needs some help. So obviously, I mean, I don't want to be that person. So obviously, the cover of The Catcher in the Rye has the horse from the carousel. Before discussion of the carousel, the ending of the book, he stays with Mr. Antolini, one of his favorite, you know, teachers that he's had multiple. And Mr. Antolini is like the one person who, when a student committed suicide, he went down, picked up the body, and actually cared for him, unlike everybody else at the school. So that demonstrates to us, the reader, that Mr. Antolini is somebody who cares about students and their well-being genuinely, isn't a phony. Of course, like the major catchphrase of the book is like being a phony, you know? During Holden's mad dash around New York City, he goes to his house for a little bit. Holden falls asleep on the couch. Mr. Antolini, you know, he's I guess like patting his head, and Holden wakes up and he's like freaking out, thinking that it's something horrible and weird happening. And I think it's so sad because Mr. Antolini, I think genuinely, just his heart is breaking for Holden, and then Holden doesn't even understand like what real empathy and what real kindness even is anymore, and he darts out of the house and he goes to see his sister. Holden has this weird thought where he wants to just run away, live in a cabin in the woods all by himself, and leave everything and everyone that he knows, including his sister that he loves. And they meet up because he has some money he wants to give back to her, and she's mad at him because he's telling her to get out, go away. It's very like what's that movie with the dog? They're like, get out. Whatever, it doesn't matter. They kind of reconcile. They start walking through the zoo together. They start walking through kind of like a park, I believe. And then, ooh, itchy. And then culminates into, I think, the scene in the book, right? This is the scene with the carousel and Phoebe on the carousel and Holden sitting and watching, and it starts to rain, and then suddenly Holden is feeling like this exuberance and this happiness that he hasn't felt in the entire book. And I think that a lot of people interpret Phoebe being on the carousel, reaching for the golden ring, which, by the way, I've actually done that before. I don't think it's allowed anymore because it's not safe. It's like where you ride on the carousel and then you have to, like, as it swings by, you have to reach for this little ring that's, like, hanging from something, and if you get it, like, you win. I think a lot of people interpret it being like adolescence is like the cycle that Holden is stuck in. So Phoebe is demonstrating by grabbing the ring that, you know, it's like him growing up and, like, putting that behind him and accepting like that the next part of his life is happening, right? Whatever, sure, I don't know. That's not how I interpreted it. I saw it as Holden is seeing one of his, arguably his favorite person in the whole world, taking a risk, right? She's reaching for the golden ring. She's trying, and she might fail. She very well could fall off and get hurt or, you know, theoretically die, right? And I think Holden seeing her do that is like Holden seeing himself trying to, you know, get out, but knowing that somebody's watching him because he's watching her. So if she fails, if she falls and gets hurt, somebody, aka Holden, will be there for her to help her. It's hope, right? I think it's like a moment where he realizes, like, I've fallen, you know, I've fallen and I'm hurt and I'm broken, but somebody is there to help me out. Like, I can get back out. That's my interpretation of it, because the whole rest of the book, you know, the whole prior part of the book is all Holden just being painfully, bitterly sad, right? And masking it with drinking and prostitutes and calling friends and teachers and sneaking into his own house and talking about his brother, hiding under his deer hunter cap, you know, like he puts it on when he's nervous, but he takes it off when he's in public because he doesn't want people to, like, judge him, right? I just feel like the whole thing is Holden, like, finally coming to the realization that, like, he's gonna be okay. And we know that he's gonna be okay because we have that very first line in the first couple paragraphs being like, hey, this is me telling you the story, that weird story, that thing that happened to me like a year ago, and he's okay now. Essentially, J.D. Salinger has a really good grasp on, I think, like, just being a reject and kind of being, like, different, and then trying to like maneuver through a society that doesn't allow for that. So that was 15 minutes about The Catcher in the Rye. There are definitely a couple things that I, skipped over. Like I didn't really talk about his brother. I didn't really talk about his parents and stuff. There's a lot packed into this book. If you've got time, you really ought to read it. Wow, that is burned. But I'll drink it anyway. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. That was probably really loud. Sorry. All right, that's everything. I hope you guys have great days, great weeks, great months, great everything. And I will see you in the next one, probably. Sweet, let's do it. Oh yeah, oh good. Am I a WWE book reader fighter? I think so.